Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the November 30th meeting of the Educator Practice Committee. Today, we're going to talk about teacher retention. And all of our members are ready to talk about their ideas. 5 ideas posted by our boss in waiting, Caitlin. So, Emily, do you want to begin?
Sure. Maybe I will read them and then put them in the chat. They're a little bit, I don't know if they're, okay, yeah, I'll just put them in the chat one at a time so you can see them. So the first one is something I brought up before, which is following the December 16th hearing to coordinate, to hold an offline discussion with relevant agencies and offices to coordinate around addressing different aspects of teacher retention crisis. So the idea, why can't I put something in the chat? Oh, because it's not the right one. Sorry. Hold on. So the idea there would be to work with other agencies and offices to come up with a plan that's coordinated, you know, not just all of us in our silos. Because I think one of the issues I have found in our system is that often agencies are not speaking to one another. And this is sort of a sub one, is just what we're already deciding to do, which is if we don't do that and we decide to just meet individually, I think that should be coordinated. So that would just entail us deciding who's going to talk to who and what agency and what do we want to get out of that. So we decide that ahead of time and then we devise the questions based on that. So that it's, you know, coordinated and we get what we're looking for. So those are sort of 1 and 1.A or 1A.
Is are we gonna why don't we do it this way? Why don't we each mention one after we'll just follow each other like that. But I'd like to ask us about the I mean, I think our push needs to be that we talk to that we as a group talk to the agency together rather than apart.
Okay, so that would be my first one then.
Yeah.
Oh, or are you saying a hybrid where all of us talk? Oh, Alistair's waiting.
Oh, good.
So wait, are you envisioning that all of us together talk to one at a time offline?
Not necessarily. You know, we talked about having just a talk with the groups, the heads of the agencies or whatever.
Yeah. So whether
or people that represent the agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think it would be a good idea for us to do that individually.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's like another sub point there. Did you get a haircut, Alistair? Looks good.
Thank you.
Alistair, we're going to each mention one of the 5 things and go around the room and just comment on them as we go.
Alistair, I'm gonna repost because I think you
Thank
can't.
you.
Yeah. So I put mine in the chat.
Ebony Rose.
And then I'm adding one actually that Fraser just did another version of this, which is all of us, all committee members.
Well, I think we need to make sure that we're on the same page with that.
These are just proposals, though. I'm just putting it in there as a.
No, I agree. But we're just, you know, that's why we're having this meeting, is to just sort of brainstorm these different suggestions and come up with some things. Mine are very technical kinds of suggestions compared to this.
Okay.
Right. So Alistair, how do you feel about us? I think that we as a committee should be meeting with the agency heads or the people who are representing the agencies to find out after the hearing, to find out how we can work together. Do we all agree with that? Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you two have more experience with how we actually turn this into something actionable. My gut tells me that it will be more effective if we are aligned in a more specific ask in addition to that broader kind of how do we collaborate ask. But that's my take. Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying, okay, on December 16th, we're going to find out what OSSE's has found out.
Mhm.
We'll have some substantive information about how many teachers left, what all that. So then we have something to work with and talk to the agencies about how we'd like to help them stop this flow of, because it hasn't stopped as of today. Schools are still losing teachers now as we speak, and they're not being replaced.
Yeah, I think you'll appreciate this. I was speaking on an ANC meeting in Ward 2 yesterday, and one of the commissioners asked what they could do to help, and I said, I just out of the blue, I said, become a substitute teacher, which I feel like was a little bit of a heavy ask, but would love your response to how I should have responded, but or how you would have responded. But I do feel like that's been the biggest need in the moment, and in the short term. And then I think long term we need to think about the pipeline. And but a lot of the work that we've been doing on the board side is longitudinal, right? It's not going to help get a teacher in the classroom tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the whole substitute teacher thing it's growing like Topsy. It's not getting any smaller. And the fact that they've got this huge carrot on a stick, $300 a day, $300 a day isn't chump change at all for anybody. And you only have to have a associate's degree. It's not working. People aren't doing it at all. I mean, I'll jump wards to Cardozo because I've got ties with Cardozo. They're hurting so much to try that, and this is not one of the things that I have on my list, but I don't mind deviating from it a little bit, because getting teachers certified is the biggest problem that principals have. Once they've chosen a teacher, once I've chosen Alistair, who wants to be a teacher, not a sub, to be a teacher, the things you have to go through downtown are not being done. They don't have the personnel to do it, to clear the people. And the principals are just tearing their hair out because they can't get the people that they've chosen to come into the building to be teachers.
I guess getting more folks from Central to become subs would make that situation worse.
Yeah, but they're not, the people from Central aren't going to do it.
No, I'm
No,
kind of facetious, but
Ebony Rose, do you have an idea that you brought with it to us?
Well, I was just taking a moment to review the document that Caitlin shared with us. I have thought. I guess I think the thing I'm still struggling with is like, what is it that we can do in trying to better understand that? Because so like with the substitutes, you're right, it is a nice chunk of change, as you put it. That being said, it sounds like I've heard from retired teachers that central office is not able to move them quickly through DCPS. And I'm not so sure what could be done about that. Like from I think that is something that is urgent support for schools that's needed now. And I'm not so, but I don't know what it is that we can do about it. When I think about like teacher retention more broadly, I do think it's helpful to have the data. I am still feeling like we only have half of the equation just because so much of it is DCPS based. And I wonder if that is something that, like, if we get the data and it's helpful, and as know that as we start to think about like trends and how this has or has not become an issue in ways that we thought it would. I gotta let Kimba in clearly, but maybe it is that we need to see the whole picture. Like, I think us advocating for data was helpful, and I think it was the right thing to do. But I guess I'm just left feeling like we have half of the equation.
The problem with asking for data is, since I've been on the board, and it's been what, almost we're finishing up our second year on the board, third year on the board. Oh, that's right. When did I get elected? Yeah, 4 years. That's right. We've been looking for data for 4 years through all kinds of different ramifications. We did a great report from the board. Mary Levy did a great report. We did this, we did that, and nobody's responded to it. And I think in the answer to what Alistair was saying and what you're saying, Ebony Rose, and also what we're all saying, is that what is our role? Okay, it seems to me that our role has to be that the house is on fire. And we've got to be screaming that the house is on fire. And that's basically right now all we can do. I'll give you an example. I got a call yesterday from Roosevelt. They had no heat. I don't know if you went outside yesterday. I did. Yesterday was brutal. The wind was kicking and it was 40 degrees. They had no heat. And I checked it. Have you checked with anybody? And they said they called the Ward 4 council member. And so I emailed the Robert White, because he's the at-large member and he's a member, lives in Ward 4. And I emailed the mayor. I texted the mayor too. I told her there was no heat. And in a couple of hours, the heat was on. In fact, the chancellor called me an hour after I did, and I didn't get to respond to him because I was teaching. But when I called him, he just told me everything that they got people from DGS, and they had a problem with the computers and whatever, but it got fixed. And I thanked everybody because it got fixed. It shouldn't be my job. It should be their job to fix what they have. So I think that what we have to figure out is what kind of recommendations can we make and proselytize for that will get change made.
That's a question. So one of the things that is not lost on me, but I think I sometimes forget, is that when we made the argument for, when the argument was made, I'm not gonna say we made it, when the argument was made for increased choice in charters in particular in DC, a big part of it was learning and being able to identify innovative practices, and then that be spread across the district. I guess this is part B thought of this data question. I do wonder if there is more that could be done with that around just like supporting educators and educator practice. Like I don't know of, I feel like like I said, the data is great. I would like to see more data. from the charter side of things. But I also know that there are charters who have done, like created some of their own grow your own programs. Like when I think about KIP has a whole pipeline built in, and they really are the second largest school district that we have. Or I think about some of the other ones who, and I'm not saying all of the practices just naturally should be adopted, but I'm curious where the place for sharing happens. I've also noticed that that seems to be a more palatable entry point for some of these conversations than some of the other, like accountability or, and because we don't, I'm just thinking about as a state board, what we have the power to demand versus where we can create opportunities to try to get people to act. That seems to have been a more successful path for us when I think about what's adopted. And I just think in particular right now, educators need a lot of supports. And so maybe part of the convening the conversation, whether it's offline or on, could be around like some of these educator support practices as a way to bolster retention.
All of mine are educator practices. Do you want to hear them? Because they, besides the transparency thing, and I understand exactly what you're saying about that, that's this nebulous, huge thing that really you can't put your hand on. DCPS is supposed to have a program that has mentoring for new teachers. Do you all know anything about that? They say they haven't.
I don't know what it's called. I don't know enough about it, but I know they do have opportunities like that.
Okay, I think that
I'm happy to ask T. Thompson for more information because
my first one after the transparency was a serious one-on-one mentorship program for all new teachers with incentives for mentors. All right, I know as a new teacher that I had great mentors. I was really, really lucky. All right, and if I hadn't had great mentors, because some of you, or Emily knows my story, because my first semester teaching was, I had great relationships with students, but everything I tried didn't work. If that's a double, it's not a double negative. Everything I tried didn't work. All right. And I had been successful with it the semester before when I was a student teacher, but my cooperating teacher was in the room with me. And we hire these new teachers and out of whatever program they come out of, and they go into the buildings and they're asked to teach. They're given the key to the room and given 5 classes or whatever, however many classes they get, and said, go do it. There has to be a mandated mentorship program for all new teachers. And if you have an incentive for the mentors, that would be very helpful for everybody. It's a win-win situation. Because if you don't have a mentor as a new teacher, that's why we have such a huge turnover rate. We've had new teachers this year that didn't even make it to October.
Fraser, can I ask a question? So are you proposing that the state board or that our committee flesh out more robust or clarify what's already being done, or what would our role be in this? I actually had this as one of mine as well, but that's all I was saying was flesh out, that I know that this was like a recommendation on one of our reports, but it's really not fleshed out, and I object to the putting it under OSSI as just like a mandate. I think that's the wrong approach, but I think this is something our committee could take up, is like, if not that, then what? How would we do it?
I think that would be, I'd like to have that conversation with those, with the leadership of the agencies about what, just have some ideas and see how they feel about it or what they're doing. Because there are a lot of people that aren't being touched by that.
So
If there
maybe
is a program,
first step would be clarifying what's already happening.
yeah, definitely. That could just be a qualifying question.
Yeah. The one more way to frame this that I think is also powerful is to say that that's not a new recommendation, right? I
Right.
mean, developing mentorship programs for teachers at all schools. I'm looking at how we've written about this in 2018 already, right? And so I still think that there's a risk if we try to take on multiple aspects of this as a committee that none of them will go through all the way. And I think personally, I would feel we increase our chance of success of tackling a piece of this issue by prioritizing one piece to chew off first. I find the development of mentoring programs also really interesting for literacy education in DC, if not for and for everything else. But we know time and time again, we've seen that when you have a mentor in the classroom who's not with you all the time, but can check in with you and debrief with you. It's one of the best ways to actually learn how to teach reading, right? And so I see that as one of the exciting recommendations that we've already recommended, that we as a committee could focus in on, talk with the other our peers at DCPS and OSCE and others about, to really actually build out, right? So.
No, that's great. I think you're right. We have to have something to focus on. And if we're focusing on mentorship, just as an example, there are nuances to that can sort of tentacleize, if there's such a word as that. I don't know if there is, but other things, because it's a key to, and we're talking about teacher retention. We're not even giving teachers a chance to be retained. They get burned out in a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year because of everything else that's going on. Now, this is obviously with this COVID, these COVID century, it feels like centuries that we've had in the last 2 years. It's different, but it's not different. When we're not going to go back to normal. We don't want to go back to normal because it wasn't working before normal, before COVID, I mean. I think that's a great idea, Alistair, is to focus.
So last meeting you had said for all of us to just flag from the recommendations we've done in the past, which ones stand out to us, right? So, I mean, if we continue this conversation around mentoring, it's also assuming that all of us agree that that's one of the ones, if not the recommendation that we're highlighting. And I'm excited for that as a possibility, but don't want to assume that we're all on the same page there yet. Is that where we are?
Well, I think, when we talk about transparency, there's a lot we can't do to make the agencies transparent. When we talk about specific mentorship or growing teachers, that's what basically what my things are about. How to keep teachers. Then everyone should buy into that. And then but I'm just one voice.
I think we are on at least the same page around the mentoring as one priority and one pathway to teacher retention. I mean, I think we know that it's evidence-based. I think it has some potential for some of our other priorities. Like Alistair shared, he thinks it's great for literacy. Uh, you know, Fraser, I know you talked about just how it personally benefit you. And so I think I heard that that's something that is a shared.
Alistair, you have something else that's away from mentorship or transparency?
Yeah, I just want to
Oh,
clarify. I don't know
okay, Emily.
if you were responding to my chat, Ebony Rose, or if that was just, but I just want to say,
I was responding to Alistair's question.
oh, okay.
Because Alistair asked if that was something, like as he said, he made the assumption that it sounded shared. And I was saying, I think it is, based on listening to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was in my list too. I guess I just am curious to hear the other ideas. So I agree with you, Alistair, that we can't do all of these and probably should only pick one, but I just want to hear the rest. So if you had others, or I know I do, and
All
Fraser.
right, go. Well, what you got?
Well, Alistair, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I just want to flag one thing about if we before. Sorry, Emily, I'm going exactly against what you asked, but around about that. What I think part of the added value for us, if we are to really focus in on one of these, is not to push it and hope that it happens well, but so much of this in any of these recommendations is the quality of the execution, right? And so to make a commitment also from our side that we're gonna, advocate for it, bring the stakeholders together to push that one recommendation through, but then also make sure that it's designed effectively, executed effectively. I think that follow through for me I would find most fulfilling to see it as a, I feel like this conversation is actually us designing as a committee what we commit to over the next large chunk of time, actually, right? And I'd rather we stick with something and really follow through. And so sorry, my 2 cents there, which is also why I think it's important that we're all on the same page and excited about what piece of this puzzle we decide to focus on. And I'm looking at this also from the literacy lens, where a lot of reading instructors have been very frustrated with the lack of real support they feel with professional development, that the professional development they're receiving is not particularly useful, and they know there's good stuff out there that there are wait lists for that they can't get into, right? And so I find that the recommendations around PD also really interesting from that perspective. Again, with the caveat that what PD, how it's offered, who offers it, how does it fit into teacher schedules, all of those those details make a big difference. But I do find these past recommendations we've made on PD also stand out to me as something interesting to work on. Emily, I know you shared yours in the chat box. Have we heard from Representative Thompson already about which recommendations stand out for her?
No, I mean, I think the one that I've thought most about is just like this question of like the data, and like what does whole data look like? I think I can't get over the fact that we're not looking across. Like we just don't have the same. We don't have the same requirements for teachers. We don't have the same level of information, and I think I just have an assumption that we should all be serving the same kids, and so I don't I don't know how the expectations are different. And so I feel like some of it fits into the data warehouse, but I would like to see some tightening around just like what we were like making what we report out and what we measure the same.
I think we could do, some of these things are like one-offs, you know, like I do think, or maybe not one-offs, but they are not big time commitments. For instance, you know, the first thing I suggested of having a gathering, there might be follow-up from that. But it also, I think part of the objective there is, like I said, creating more coordination across agencies to get them to, you know, talking to each other more. Maybe that's presumptuous, I don't know, but I mean, I think that is an issue in our system that I have encountered. I hear a lot that things are much too siloed, and it's also a way of kind of garnering commitment. So that could be a one-off thing with some kind of light touch follow-up, right? I could imagine that. Similarly, I could imagine the work around sort of just advocating for the legislation, the teacher warehouse legislation. You know, that would involve members just being more versed on it, on what's in there. And that's something that, you know, Caitlin shared, that crosswalk that Alex had created where it shows what OSSI wouldn't be covering. But I think the more important piece is that we're asking OSSI to be responsive and not just say like, this is what we're giving you. Be happy with that, right? So I think part of that would take some time for us to become versed, but mostly it's about then talking to council members to get support for it. So that also is like a smaller rock, right? And then maybe we could choose like a larger project that's more of a, you know, research or, you know, trying to get data, blah, blah, blah. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah. I mean,
I get really nervous about surveys and projects and everything like that, because I know a lot of people just sort of put it in the trash can after it's done. And we've got an emergency right now. And Alistair brought up the most, I remember when I first came on the board, that when we had panels and things, it was about like what was going on in the classroom. You know, how to make the classroom better, or innovations in the classrooms and things like that. I'm trying to remember the last time we had a board meeting in the last 6 or 8 months where we had anybody really talk about what was going on in the classroom. And that's what's important. We've got an emergency right now with teachers not teaching because of all kinds of things. And there are so many tests being given in the assessments in these classrooms right now that don't have anything to do with learning. I hope you're aware of that. And, you know, and I would really like to, I mean, that's what teaching is all about, is like learning.
Yeah.
So
I do want to be cautious that we distinguish between what are short-term interventions to put a Band-Aid on the fact that there's just a massive shortage right now, and this side of the work, which inevitably is going to take quite some time to get all the stakeholders to come around, to collaborate around, actually build out, whether that be, you know, any of these recommendations. And I appreciate the way that you're thinking about it, Representative Gasoy, of, you know, some things are more, you know, short-term, but, you know, some things are a little easier to execute in from these recommendations than others, but many of the ones that I think are most transformative, like actually build strengthening a grow your own program and implementing statewide professional development, are going to take a significant amount of time. It's not going to solve the short-term challenges of the moment, right? And so I would find, I would find any of these recommendations we've already made to be interesting and useful for us to re-highlight, continue to advocate, follow through on. And so I do think that the task for us is to choose which one. My top ones that really stand out to me are the mentoring, grow your own, and PD ones. But I'm very open to looking at the other ones. So as the chair of our committee, Fraser, do you have a thought on how we could kind of narrow in on?
I think that,
On a
I don't
few,
know,
yeah.
I don't know what y'all know about PD in the city, the professional development that goes on for, I mean, I can only speak for DCPS, right? But I know that it's a misnomer because nobody's being developed as a professional. It's just, it's a time.
That's
it's a
the thing,
space.
right? It's not just, hey, do this PE and PD and we're done with our side of the work. I think how we design it, how we execute it, who's doing it actually does make a massive difference, right? I mean, I've been talking with teachers who have been sitting through literacy PDs that are funded but are not helpful, right? Versus there are so many other ones that they want that could be helpful. So I see where you're going with that, Fraser, but I also think it's that's kind of the next, that's part of the work once we decide which theme we want to focus on.
Yeah,
right?
no, I agree. I had one thing about there should be monthly professional development for first and second year teachers about developing themselves as professional teachers, not necessarily subject oriented, but how to do a lesson plan, because we assume all these things and they're wrong.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think we have to always think about is just like we're not a local board. And so as a state board, at what grain size, I think, are we talking? Like, I remember having a conversation about the PD question. And I see in the notes, it says we didn't come to consensus. I actually think there is a role that we should be leaning on OSSI to play around just like what is provided to everyone across the board. And there should also be, like I remember Representative Gasoy and Representative Leary talking about, making sure everything wasn't top down. I don't think of OSSI as the only thing. I think of OSSI as a foundation, like it's the floor as opposed to the ceiling. Like, what is it that everybody is getting? And I'm not so sure that OSSI, or we know of all the muscles OSSI has around this. And I think especially now with the challenges that people are facing with instruction and having to try to accelerate learning or whatever we're calling it, there are some real opportunities around this. I do think that so that thought finished. Second thought, I do think the grow your own programs are particularly important. I would need a better understanding around what, if any, are the challenges to implementing some of the newer initiatives that are suggested and where there are other opportunities. I know we talked about this earlier on, but I think, in summary, I think that the mentoring sounds like something most of us as committee members are interested in. I think there's a conversation around PD. Kimba, sorry, that most of us are interested in. Stop. And then I
needs-
think there's a
Kimba needs to go to
conversation.
professional development.
Kimba is trying to play with his friends because it is prime time walk time.
Oh,
And I made the mistake of leaving the screen door open. So he's yelling at them because he's not outside with them, and neither am I. I think so. I think mentoring sounds like shared interest. Professional development sounds like there's shared interest. Grow your own sounds like there's shared interest. I would flag to your point, Representative O'Leary, about the classroom. I know that there is now a Black Educator Caucus that is forming. And I know they have shared, started to share or coalesce around some concerns around retention and supports for Black teachers in particular.
Good.
And I think that I know some of our resolutions and recommendations talked about that. And so maybe some of the representatives from there would be ones that we should invite to a future committee meeting, just to continue to ground ourselves in
Could
some
you,
of the, and think
can you
about how to move forward.
can you speed it up a little bit and invite them to testify next week or the week after next? On the 15th?
I could always extend the invite. Can I make it happen? We'll see. Like I can make the invite happen. But yes, I will extend the invitation.
Good. Well, how about this? Since we are sort of sticking a pin in until we find out on the 16th, the day after our public meeting, what OSSI's doing with transparency. I mean, what the results of their report will be. Can we just stay with PD and mentorship? How do you feel about that, Emily?
Sure. I mean, any of these feel valuable to me. It's about
Right.
figuring out how to move forward with it. I am just reading, I hadn't seen Caitlin's comment till just now, but I guess this is this a separate thing, or is this part of, like, are we considering doing a teacher advisory committee in lieu of anything else, or would that be?
No,
in
the teacher advisory committee is something that is in our thought bubble, but it's not something that we're
Pursuing at
we
the
put
moment?
together for the same reason about the parent advisory committee. The same thing about the audience. Remember we talked last time about the audience, about the parent advisory committee? And that same kind of thing, that we want to make sure that we have a wide range of
Yeah.
voices in the room. But that's not anything that we get. I mean, we have plenty of people that can advise us that are teachers, other than, I'm not talking about me, because I'm a retired teacher. Problem is that the situation hasn't changed since I was in my 10th year. And we really need, but this whole thing, excuse me. We really need to make sure that sorry, I don't want to get, it'll ring back. That we, because I would love to have, I really can't wait to have a meeting where we can just sit back and listen to what the agencies are doing with mentorship and professional development, so that we can have a congenial, collaborative relationship with those agencies. Because that's so important, that we can, agree to agree and agree to disagree, and not be throwing things across the room kind of thing, or not even coming to the meetings. I want to do that. And I think we have an opportunity with a new superintendent to be able to share and to work together. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Just like waking up every morning is an opportunity.
Speaking of okay, so let's say those are our big rocks that we focus on. would we still want to try to convene or at least have conversations with folks after the December meeting? And another small rock I propose is, what do you think about having a panel focused on what schools are doing to promote teacher well-being at this moment?
Teacher well-being?
Yeah, like so there
Who's gonna be the people talking?
teachers or school folks who actually, so there are some schools who have set up actual like initiatives, and they
No, I
should
think that,
emulate it
are you talking about a panel for us or for the
for the
board as a whole?
for the board as a whole. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it up, and this is not at all decided, so, but there is a chance that we may not be able to do the social studies panel for the December meeting, and we'll need to do something quickly if we're going to have a panel. And I can think of 2 schools in my ward that where, you know, we could have folks talk about this. And it would be cool because it's one is a DCPS and one is a charter, so that's interesting. But I bet there's schools across the city where interesting, you know, like they're being intentional about creating a culture of well-being. And that's something that I think would be worth learning about and promoting, right? Just by having it as something people can watch, we can share.
Well, I think that's a great idea. You're gonna set the panel up.
Sure, but I'm gonna hit
No,
you
that-
up for
I
like,
mean, I don't think that's necessarily, I guess we could say that has something to do with our committee, and we can take credit if it works. And, but I don't know. I mean, just like when I was asking Emily Rose to have, I mean, I ask people to testify all the time. And sometimes they do, but you know, sometimes they don't. They tell me they're going to and they don't show up. But you know, but that's just part of our role as members of the State Board of Education, to get the information out there. And we do get the, you know, people are watching. That I really enjoyed that memo that we got from the student from George Washington. Did you read that? That was really helpful for me. When I think it
yeah,
was
that
a
was
female.
cool. It was
Yeah.
like in her class, but she was like, this is a real thing. Yeah, no, I love
Yeah,
that.
that was really helpful. So are we gonna sort of come away with, I don't know what time it is. I don't have a clock on my,
It's 10:06, so we've got 10 minutes. Then I'm
Okay.
going to shake.
and I've got a meeting at 6 too.
Yeah.
So is our takeaway today that we're going to, we'll talk about, I mean, I guess I'll bring it up at the meeting. Oh God, it's tomorrow. At tomorrow, that our priorities are going to be mentorship and professional development. And we'll get back to them with the information. But we'd like feedback. Is that what?
Get back to who? Sorry.
To the board, from the one we have our next meeting. Is that
We're
basically
not
what?
gonna-
And also about the what we're going to do after the 16th about
Yeah.
transparency. Are those 3? I'm not going to. I'm not going to get into this silos and buckets and all these other words that people use to put stuff in. But are those the 3 things that that I should bring up tomorrow for our report?
Sure.
I
Okay.
mean, I do feel attached to the grow. I don't want to throw out the grow your own. I feel like 3 always feels better than 4. But
Well, I'll bring up grow your own too. But we need to have more of a, see, the other one sort of self-identify. But like when you're talking about grow your own, like you're talking about, are you talking about charters?
no, I mean like pathways for people to get into the teaching profession. People, especially people who are from DC.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, that grow your own. I
Yeah.
wasn't, I was hearing setting, see, this
Because
is,
I do think it matters for like teaching retention. So like if
oh
I'm
no,
someone,
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
so like, yeah, like I was at Miller.
I was in another place right then with Grow Your Own, because quiet as it's kept, as Toni Morrison would say, I always grew my own curriculum for 47 years. And now that I'm still teaching at UDC for 51 years, is that I didn't really follow somebody else's curriculum. So that's what I was hearing when you were talking about, I wasn't even thinking about teachers. And I think that's the best idea in the world.
Oh, I just realized, I'm like, who's SG? Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, so are you thinking supporting or like figuring out how to have a role in what OSSI is already doing or what UDC is already doing or doing something more?
I think it's always helpful as we have new, as we start to do things and try to do things to know what's happening with them. I never think it's a good idea to just be like, oh, there's an idea and we support it, and then just hope it all goes well. And so I would be interested in just kind of a update from OSSI on what's happening with that and
Yeah.
hearing any,
And I've mentioned it.
challenges or successes or whatever, and also if given, yeah. So that's where I would like to start.
No, I agree completely, because
I
as
would
I
like
mentioned,
to ask if there's I mean, I actually raised this in one of our leadership meetings, but it's not with the team who's doing it. So maybe we need to go directly to the team that's responsible for implementing it and just asking if there's a role for us too. I mean, I think it'd be cool if we could, and we being the board, not necessarily just this committee, but how we can be helpful and partners in helping them to build it out and make it successful.
Yeah, because I mean, I do think that I don't know which one of these meetings I was in, but it's been a while. And we were actually in a meeting with somebody from UDC. And my mom went to UDC and she student taught while she was at UDC, but they were talking about just some of the limitations of their placements and how many people they could place. And that seemed like an opportunity, because what I know is of the universities we have, UDC has a much larger number of native Washingtonians who are moving through UDC than a Georgetown or GW or even a Howard.
Right.
I agree completely. And when I first started teaching, when I first started teaching, it was, the majority of the teachers in DCPS were graduates of DC Teachers College.
Yeah. And so I totally want to update on some of the newer proposed Grow Your Own programs. And I think there might be opportunities to identify just expanding pipelines for Grow Your Own more broadly and generally, some of them that have been in existence for some time, because there seem to be some limitations around how many students they were able to offer that experience to in a given year, which I think totally affects, of course, how many teachers you can turn out.
All right, ladies, we're going to have to, this has been great.
Can I just say one more thing? Sorry, it's very
Sure.
related, which is I just remembered that Georgetown just got a huge grant to expand their tiny program. So now it'll be a bigger program for dual language Grow Your Own. So it'll be focused on, mostly Spanish speaking, but hopefully others as well. So anyway, that's exciting. And, so I think it supports, I have to look at it again, but I'm pretty sure it supports free education or very low price education for DC students who are interested. So that is something we can definitely help to promote, hopefully.
I would love to have a panel with UDC and Georgetown and AU or Trinity,
yeah.
Just an update panel. But why don't we try to do that for our next meeting?
Oh, like have them come talk to us.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
Caitlin?
Yeah, so would you want to invite all of the educator preparation programs in DC?
Or the pipeline.
Well, why don't we how many are there?
16.
No.
Because
But we could invite,
there's also like the alternative route programs. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. So we can try to identify the ones that have a grow your own pipeline sort of thing.
that'd be great. No, I mean, this
Okay.
is very, it'll be mentioned tomorrow. We'll have 4 Ebony Rose.
And Caitlin, can we try to find out where OSSI is on choosing the partner institutions? Because that's something that they, that's in their court, I think, at this point.
All right, this has been
Will do.
extraordinarily productive. Caitlin will get the notes to us. And I'll bring it up tomorrow. It won't be long, but it's been very productive and it'll spur interest, I hope. Thank you all so much. And
Thank
you all,
you.
thank you all out there in the world that have been watching us too. And have a good week. Don't forget that tomorrow we have our monthly business meeting. You can also spend more time on Zoom tomorrow. We'll be there.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Yes, we will. Good night.